this panel to order. This is Research 7, and we have 3 dynamic speakers this afternoon, so we're all going to be enlightened and informed. And so let's get right to it in the interest of time. I'm going to introduce all 3 at the beginning, and then we'll flow from there. Our first presenter is Ms. Angela Porter, independent scholar from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And she will be speaking on the wAs, the snake, and the nTr, and an examination of the relationship between the 3 Kemetic symbols. Our second presenter is Mr. Ashar Imhotep, and his presentation will be on the Afrosymmetry model and Paranogamy, a structure analysis of language as a vehicle for culture creation among Negro Egyptian speakers. And our final, last but not least, speaker will be Dr. Wosini Yafru, and he will be doing he's from Tennessee State University, and he will be presenting on Dr. Jacobs Carruthers' contribution to our understanding of Nile Valley civilization. And at this moment, I want to turn it over to Angela Porter.
Hotep, everyone. At this point, I'll consult the elders in the room and see if I have permission to proceed. All right, thank you. Okay, so let's get started since we're pressed for time. So I'm talking about 3 things today: snakes, Satek, and the wAs scepter, which you can see in our conference theme, but I'll get back to in a minute. And we're going to discuss those in that order. So right away, there were snakes in Kemet. There were cobras. My favorite, the horned viper, was also in Kemet. There were larger snakes like this one, which they now call the African rock python. So these were creatures that our ancestors lived among, and they thought of them as good and bad. Some snakes were poisonous, some were not. Some ate rodents, that was helpful for our ancestors who were trying to keep those pests away. So there was not an evil connotation that was associated with snakes. It was a dual connotation. And I wanted to show this video quick, or part of it. Let me see if I can get this to work. All right, well, we might not be able to do that. 1 second. All right, well, we're gonna skip that. But what this was a video of a snake molting or shedding its skin. And it looks like it's coming out of itself. Now imagine if you're living back in Kemet and seeing that for the first time, or you don't know other animals do this. That's a very remarkable thing that we've kind of just gotten used to. But because of this, because of the process of the snake shedding its skin periodically, our ancestors thought of this as a sign that snakes were undying, that they were eternal creatures, that they were limitless, and they existed, but they didn't exist all at once. And we see this right in the text here. This is from the book of Going Forth by Day, plate 27. I am a snake long of years, Au Ren Pet, long of years, a long-lived snake. Mes Ra Neb, born every day. Imi Jeruta, at the limits of the earth. And then we have Maui Kui, Renep Kui, Re Neb. I become new, I become young every day. This is showing us that snakes were associated with rebirth, living, continuing, being ageless, being undying, and living at the limits of the earth. And so one of the big snakes in our Kemetic worldview is Apep, who lives at the limits of the earth. I think Sister Yvonne was saying earlier, talking about the phases of the sun and the sun setting at the Aket, which is a literal place in the Kemetic worldview. The Aket is the horizon, And the sun would go to the horizon, and our ancestors would know we're not going to see it anymore for the rest of the day. It's going to descend into the duat. But who lives at the Aket, the horizon? Apep. And he is a snake at the limit of the earth. You have to pass Apep to get to the duat, the hidden world, the underworld. We also kind of know what our ancestors thought about snakes by looking at the language itself. This is a rendering of the name Aset, who is also called Isis. We see the snake determinative, the egg determinative. This is the name Pesajet, which is a reference to the many Netaru. It means the 9 Netaru, but Dr. Carruthers would say it actually means the many Netaru, all of the Netaru, all of the gods and goddesses, as they say, of Kemet. There are snake determinatives here. And I think that might be a reflection of the idea that snakes were eternal, and so were the Netaru. They're immortal, they're undying. Another popular snake in our Kemetic worldview is Whyset. These are the 2 ladies, Nebeti, my friend and roommate Brittany Moncrief, who presented earlier at the conference. She and I talk about the Nebeti all the time, the 2 ladies, Nekebet and Whyset. Waj meaning green in the Kemetic language, the green one. We see them in this rendering. We also see them on the pharaoh or the Nesut's headgear. There's Whyset ready to strike, ready to intimidate foes of the pharaoh. And the pharaoh would try to associate him or herself with Whyset to represent the fearsome aspects, to intimidate the enemies. It's kind of the same way the pharaoh would connect himself with Setek to strike fear in his enemies. And here's Setek, one of my favorites, who I've been talking about for a couple years now. I keep coming back to him. Setek is, if you were to watch the preview for Gods of Egypt, which recently came out and flopped because everyone knew it was a terrible representation of our ancestral storytelling. If you watch Gods of Egypt, you would think Setek is the devil in the Western worldview. And that's because the Eurocentric, pessimistic, Northern Cradle worldview interprets the stories of Kemet and reads it through this binary good-evil lens. They need a good, they need an evil, and they've chosen Heru or Horus to be the good, and Setek or Seth or Set to be the evil one. And they look at 2 texts for that, really. Plutarch's version, and Plutarch was Greek. He came way down the line, misinterpreted everything, and just made a sensational version of the fighting, the contending of Heru and Setek. And then they look at another text from the New Kingdom, which they call, which the Egyptologists tend to call the contendings of Horus and Seth, but which our ancestors named the judgment or New Year's narrative of Heru and Setek. So that's him. And if we look at what our ancestors made, we see that these 2 characters are on balance with each other. This here is from the 12th dynasty. It's Heru on the left, Setek on the right, in the Sematawi posture, uniting the 2 lands, Sematawi. They're on equal footing. So Sheikh Anta Diop, he looked at Setek, but he unfortunately adopted the binary worldview of Setek. He accepted that Setek was African. He traced him through Africa, but the premise was always Setek is evil. And like Mama Ife told us yesterday, Dr. Carruthers was an intellectual mentee of Sheikh Anta Diop. But on this point, he disagreed with Sheikh Anta Diop and said that he was adopting this Eurocentric worldview of Setek. Dr. Carruthers, and this is his quote, says, Plutarch's account of the contendings between Heru and Setek omits the real point of the drama, which is the ultimate reconciliation of Hor and Setek, Hor reference to Heru. So let's look at it. This is the passage he's talking about from that narrative. It's the favorite part. It's like the vindication of Setek, which I love. Then Aset brought Setek restrained or bound as a guarded person, Remech Sau, a prisoner. So he was restrained, his arms behind his back. She brings him before the court of the nTr, and Atum, who's kind of presiding, says to him, "Why are you preventing yourselves from being judged?" So for some context for that, Heru and Setek have been fighting for the throne of Kemet for 80 years, the story says. They haven't been subjecting themselves to any courts. Kemet had various courts set up, various councils set up. They haven't been subjecting themselves to that. They've just been battling it out, playing games, injuring each other. And at this point, everybody's just tired of this mess. And so Atum is asking, why won't you just let us name Heru the next Nasut, or Pharaoh? Would you take the office for yourself? So then Setek says to Atum, he's restrained, "Mbiat pai neb nefer." Now, this is important. He's saying, "To the contrary, my good sovereign." He's speaking in honorifics, pai neb nefer. This is very respectful language. So this is not the sign of an evil or rowdy person who does not respect the protocol. And here's the part Dr. Carruthers is referring to. Imi ashtu Heru sa Aset, son of Aset. This is call Heru, son of Aset. Go get Heru and give him the office of his father Asir. This is the concession. So Heru and Setek, no one wins. Setek concedes the throne to Heru. He steps aside. And we know, and we're about to explore for a second, that Heru is the elder of the situation, Setek is the elder of the situation. Heru is a child at this point. Later on in different stories, we have Heru the elder, but right now in this story, he is a child. And so for Setek to concede the throne to him, it's almost like he's recognizing he's ready. I'm ready to step aside. Let's let him have it. Let him ascend to the throne. So when you understand that story and you filter it through the primary text and the African lens and you get rid of all that gods of Egypt stuff and the European worldview, images like this suddenly make more sense. They're less puzzling. This is the back of a scarab, and this is Heru and Setek holding hands. So let's talk about that balance for a second. In the narrative, Heru, again, is young and experienced. Setek is the elder, he's the warrior, he's eternal of years. Hatshepsut at some point even associates herself with Setek, saying she wishes she has the years of Setek. She's trying to say, I hope that I live for a long time. He's associated with age. Kind of like the snake, right? Clearly Heru's a child. I just wanted to show y'all some of the glyphs. This here says, the nTr are talking about Heru. They're kind of ragging on Heru. They're saying, oh, well, is the office to be given to this child? Pa'ajad, you can see the child glyph right there. When Setek, his big brother, his great brother is around, they're just like, this is preposterous. We have an older brother here who can handle it. At one point, they even say, your body is despicable, Heru. The office is too big for you. You child with bad taste in his mouth. Here's the taste glyph. Bean, bad taste, or F in his mouth, which I think is some kind of Kemetic insult, saying you're young, you saw milk on your tongue, bad taste in your mouth. Meanwhile, Setek is out here, a warrior, defending Kemet. No one can really insult his virility and power. Here's a depiction of him from the 5th dynasty, and he's holding the wAs, which we'll get back to, and he has a rope which you can't see outside of the frame, but he's dragging foreign prisoners with him, and he's carrying a knife. He's the warrior. I also want to draw your attention quickly to the epithets here. This is Nubet. This is a town that's associated with Setek. It literally means gold town or gold city. Nub is the glyph for gold. And Neb Kasut, which means Lord or sovereign or ruler of foreign lands, Neb Kasut. Those are things associated with Setek. Real quick, Heru and Setek also have this other balance going on that looks at their injuries during their fight. So during the fight, Heru, who is depicted by the hawk, his eye was ripped out. Setek is depicted by a bull in the fight, and at one point his testicles are torn off. He's castrated. So we see this repeatedly in the narratives, in the pyramid texts, in the judgment narrative. We see references to eyes and testicles. So the Ujat eye, which I'm sure many of us know, is associated with a hawk. How do you disable a hawk, a raptor that comes down and strikes and precisely gets its prey? You take his eye out. Jehudi restored Heru's eye. This is Jehudi as the ibis, but then we have Jehudi as a baboon holding the Ujat eye. He's restoring it and giving it back to Heru. Setek, though, we don't think he got that treatment. He was castrated, and no one restores him in the main narrative, at least. So what happens when you castrate a bull? If you're a bull, you get castrated, you become someone's pet. You're docile. They have authority and power over you. So Setek became docile, and at the end of the narratives, he actually is adopted or taken under the wing of Re, the sun, or Ra, and he accompanies Ra on the solar boat, which is the sun, that goes to the Akhet and into the Duat, and has to proceed past the great snake that we talked about, Pep. So I'm going to breeze through these a little bit. These are some examples of how the pharaohs or the Nasut in Kemet associated himself with both Heru and Setek. This is a pectoral jewelry with both of them. And I want to note the quote, Horus or Heru will open the way for him and Setek will be his defender. Thank you. So, yeah, that also kind of touches back on the eye and the virility aspect. Horus will open the way for him, meaning he will guide him. He has the perceptiveness of a hawk or a falcon. His eye will open the way. He can see things we don't. Setek, a strong bull, he has virility, he has power, he will defend you. So I wanted to pause because let's take a second to think about what it means as a Nasut, as a new pharaoh who has heard this story every year. It's the New Year's judgment narrative. And how he can relate to both Heru and Setek at once. Every Nasut can relate to Heru, being the child with milk on his tongue, being inexperienced, having a despicable body. Because everybody who ascends to the throne is inexperienced at being a Nasut. So you relate to Heru. But every Nasut wants to be Setek at the same time because he's the defender, he's fierce. They all want to become an elder as well. He has the years of eternity. And now, funneled through Dr. Carruthers and funneled through the African lens, we also know that Setek conceded his throne, he conceded his spot. I'd argue that every Nasut wants that aspect of Setek as well, because by the time they leave, by the time they die, they want to be able to turn over that office to some Heru, some young person who they feel is ready to take on the office. So that's another feature of Setek that they like. We see the pharaohs associating themselves with Setek in a lot of ways, one being the Beek Nabu name or the Golden Horus name. This is Heru on top of gold. And remember, I just talked about how Setek is from Nubet, Gold Town. Scholars are now starting to think this is actually the Setek name. And I put this over here too because there's a reference in one of the texts that says Heru places Setek under him. And I think that that's significant when it comes to the Beek Nabu name, the Golden Horus or the Setek name. We also see some pharaohs just outright naming themselves after either Heru and Setek or just Setek. So this is Kasa-Kemwi, who is from the 12th dynasty. He has both Heru and Setek above the Serek that encases his name. These two glyphs are the Sekhem glyphs, which mean power. Sekemwi means the two powers. The two powers have appeared. That's Ka. So the two powers are here. That's basically this name. The two powers are here in me. That's my name. He's referring to Heru and Setek. And then we, of course, know Seti from the 19th dynasty. And here are two different versions of that name. But you see Setek's glyph right in the middle of his name. So this is a nTr who's feared and revered. There's no evil associated with him. And then I got kind of giddy when I saw some of these pictures, so I just wanted to share them. But you'll note Setek is here, anointing the pharaoh, and there's Heru. We see this again. This is Ramses II at Abu Simbel, Setek and Heru blessing the pharaoh. And then I think this is the most remarkable statue of all, Ramses III, Heru and Setek blessing the pharaoh. And there's the back view. This is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. So now I got to wrap up because I have about 7 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. But now we're on to the third phase, which is Setek and the snake and the wAs. So generally, it's interesting because in the pyramid texts and the book of Coming Forth by Day, we see Setek associated with this snake shrine. And it's just curious. There's no real explanation, but in this part on plate 13, Setek said to his entourage, erect a snake shrine for it. He's talking about for Heru in context. So there's some association with snakes, but we definitely know there's an association with the great snake Apep. And I'll just let Setek explain this in his own words from the judgment narrative. Me, I am Setek, the strongest Apeti of the nine, or the house of the nine, or in Dr. Carruthers' translation, of the many Necheru, the Pesajet. And he says he's the strongest because I killed that enemy of Pa-Re, in other words, Apep, daily when I am at the front of the bark of millions, the front of the solar bark. Meanwhile, this is at the bottom, I don't know if y'all can see. Meanwhile, none of the other Necheru know how to do this. He's the only one who can kill Apep. And the other, and so I should have Asir's position. The other Necheru say, oh yeah, that's right. Yes, you're right, Setek. Setek, son of Nut, is right. Ma'ati, Setek, sa Nut. So this is an acknowledged power of Setek that makes him unique. He's the only Nechur who knows how to kill or at least subdue or exercise power or authority over Apep. Speaking of power and authority, now we have the wAs. The wAs scepter is translated as meaning power and authority. We see it in a lot of our conference themes, and we see it rendered in a lot of places: all power, stability, all life, Ankjet and wAs. But what many people are wondering is this thing, which does have facial features, is this Setek? Kind of looks like him, has the snout and this kind of ear situation going on. There are certainly differences, but perhaps those differences in shape reflect that the wAs could have been used as a tool. So there's some scholarship that says this was an actual tool, and it wasn't always a scepter, it was a staff used to control animals. So think of like a shepherd's crook or something like that, used to control animals. And it has a forked end. So they have posited, some scholars, that the wAs is used to control snakes by using the forked ends. And here's one piece of artwork I saw where there's a snake hanging off of a wAs, holding a Shen glyph, which means eternity. So I'm not really sure. I mean, these are all questions we're raising, but it's very curious. One thing we do know for sure is that Setek exercises power and authority over Apep. And so it makes sense if he has a wAs, which means power and authority, in that context. So the two final things on this point that I want to say deal with two different cities in Kemet. One is Whyset, and Whyset is in Upper Kemet. It's also known as Thebes. It's the capital at a lot of long time period in Kemet is the capital. And you notice it has the word wAs in it, and it's rendered by a modified wAs scepter. Whyset has that feminine T ending, like Kemet, Aket, Whyset, New Bet. So it's wAs town, it's wAs city, and wAs means power and authority. So it's authority city, it's the capital, in other words. But you'll notice this curious looking wAs here, it's interesting. It has a mott feather in the back of it, and then it has a ribbon or streamer, or what a lot of scholars say is a ribbon. But maybe it might be arms, because we do know wAs has had arms in the back. Now, what does that mean? I haven't been able to put all the pictures up here in the interest of time. I'm gonna have to stop soon, but Satek is often rendered very carefully, and his power is so grand, it's so large and overwhelming that they often render Satek and stick a knife in him or stick a spear in his image. They draw a spear stabbing him to take away some of that power, because he can help you, but he can also hurt you. And so this mott feather stuck in the back of a wAs might be the feather of Ma'at stuck in a symbolic rendering of Satek. And the arms behind the back, or the ribbon behind there, might suggest he was bound, like at the end of the judgment narrative. Judgment narrative is the narrative about pharaohs ascending to the throne. It's told every year on New Year's, and pharaohs govern from Whyset. So this is like, we're kind of in speculation land here, but this is a real question of mine. Does this represent that entire story? Does this represent that moment where Satek turned around and was right, the feather of Ma'at, righteousness, and was just by conceding his position and allowing Heru to ascend to the throne? And is that told every year to emphasize the legitimacy of the pharaoh in Whyset? So that's a question I have to look a little further into, but I'll end on the stronger point, which is this, and I'll breeze right through this. Nebet or New Bet, also in Upper Kemet, is unquestionably, undeniably associated with Satek. There's a Satek temple in New Bet. There's not much left there, but what they discovered there was a wAs. And this isn't just any wAs. It's a 7-foot tall colossal wAs. This is the largest faience object known to man. It's 7 feet. They had to put it in the oven and bake it. It's a glazed clay object. It's the largest wAs we've ever seen. And so it's at Satek Temple in Satek's town, New Bet. So I think there's unquestionably something there, a connection there. Oh, and by the way, it has facial features, as you can see. It had arms at one point. It was dedicated by Amenhotep III of the 18th dynasty. So there's no question, there's some kind of connection between Satek, the wAs, and we know that he would have needed it to exercise power over the large snake Apep. And so I'll just conclude on this picture here, which shows Satek with the wAs and the snakes. The pharaoh having a symbol that he needs to hold in the afterlife, which is the only place we really see the wAs being held. The pharaoh would want this object, if it had any kind of connection to Satek, and if it had any kind of function in controlling snakes. Because when we die in the Kemetic worldview, we go to the Duat and we encounter the greatest snake, Apep, and we have to get past him, we have to subdue him, even though he is everlasting, and even though the sun encounters Apep every single day, we have to be able to encounter him and exercise power and authority over him. And so I definitely think we should take a closer look at the wAs and funnel it through the stories that are reinterpreted through the African lens to see if we can find out the true meaning of it and how it should be significant in our own stories. And so thank you so much for listening to me. I hope I didn't go too far over. Thank you.
This is it, what? Lucini pouring from the sky, let's get rich, what? The Jiki Fonts and Sugar Dimes can't